When people think of Canberra, the first thing that comes to mind is that EC after EC after EC. So when a new private condo pops up in this area, right, the first question will always be, why would someone pay more for this when there are so many executive condos nearby? So today we're going to break that down. I'll walk you through what Canberra Crescent Residences is really offering, how it stacks up against nearby projects like Watergardens and Commodore, and the most important thing is whether the launch prices actually make sense in today's market. Because at the end of the day, it's not about whether it's an EC or a condo, it's about whether there's value or not, and if buyers actually see it. So if you want early updates on new launches or time-sensitive deals, you can join my Telegram channel over here. And if you're serious about exploring your next home or investment, feel free to reach out to me at my phone number listed there. So here's what you need to know about Canberra Crescent. It is a 99-year leasehold project, a pretty decent land size of 219,000 square feet, and it sits in District 27. So you're looking at about 376 units across 4 blocks with 12 stories high. So it's not just about housing, they have also planned like a sky garden and even a childcare center inside, which honestly, it makes it quite practical for young families. So one thing worth mentioning is that the childcare space, right, is on a lease basis, and so it means that the rental amount will go into the MCST funds. This is a joint effort between Keng Leong and Loh Keng Huat. So they are using this thing called advanced precast concrete system. So basically it means that the major structural components are still precast, but you still can hack some of the walls around it. TOP date is around April of 2030. And in terms of car park, right, surprisingly, it's actually a 1-to-1 car park ratio, 382 car park lots inclusive of 4 lots for EV, and they have also carved out parking for the childcare centre as well. So when it comes to the developers behind Canberra Crescent Residences, so you have 2 names that is worth paying attention to, which is Keng Leong and Loh Keng Huat. So Keng Leong is probably best known for their work in luxury spaces. They have built some of Singapore's most premium homes, projects like Mayor House, focusing on quality design and timeless architecture. But they are not just about luxury, right? So they have also delivered well-built homes in the mid-tier segment, showing that they understand what the premium and mass market buyers are looking for. However, on the other hand, Loh Keng Huat has a strong background in both construction and development, and they are actually the team behind Klimt at Cairnhill. So what it means is that they know how to build solid and reliable homes, and they've got the awards to show it, like the BCA Conquest Band 1 rating for build quality. In short, it just means like there's a banding reserved for developers, and builders have to consistently deliver their projects with little or no major defects. So when you actually combine these 2 together, right, essentially you're getting a partnership between the design quality and build reliability, which for homeowners, I think this is exactly what you want in a long-term property. And then if you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, you'll notice that Canberra Crescent Residence is over here, and it's surrounded by a huge number of HDB blocks, especially in the Sembawang and Canberra areas. And that is important because these HDB towns are actually filled with young families whom have either just hit their MOP period or they are going too soon. So many of them would probably be thinking, what's next? Do we stay put or do we upgrade? So for a project like Canberra Crescent, it makes a lot of sense as the natural next step. Because it's close by, it means that families don't have to uproot their whole lifestyle for schools, childcare, parents living nearby. It will all stay the same. But they get to move into a private condo with better facilities and privacy. So in a way, right, the demand is actually already sitting right there. It's just a question of when these families feel ready to make that move. Location-wise, Canberra Crescent Residence is sitting in a pretty sweet spot for families who want to have convenience without paying for central prices. So it's about 5 minutes walk to the Canberra MRT, which connects you to the North-South line. And you've got 2 key towns nearby, which is Sembawang and Yishun, both offering malls, hawker centres and essential services. So around the condo, it's mostly a quiet residential zone with schools, parks, and you've got Canberra Plaza within walking distance for groceries and dining, and Sun Plaza or Sembawang Shopping Centre if you need a little bit more variety. A 10 minutes drive will bring you to North Point City. For families with school-going children, the options here are actually pretty decent. Within 1 kilometre, you have Wellington Primary and Sembawang Primary, and in the upcoming Townsville Primary School in 2029. The school will not be admitting students to Primary 1 through the Primary 1 registration exercise from 2025 to 2027, and the school will only admit its first batch of P1 students tentatively in 2029 with the 2028 Primary 1 registration exercise. So in terms of views, right, Canberra Crescent Residences is fairly open on most of the sites. On one end, you got the greenery and heritage black and white houses, which give this site a quieter and more scenic outlook. On the other side, right, the distance to the surrounding residential blocks and to the schools, right, range from 50 meters to about 150 meters. So you're not gonna feel like you are too boxed in a way. So this is another illustration on how your views will be like at Canberra Crescent Residence. So if we look at the block placement, right, you actually realize that it's quite thoughtfully planned. The stacks don't directly face each other, and it gives most units either institutional facing or a landed view facing. Most blocks are actually aligned close to the north-south facing for better natural ventilation. So if you look at the site plan here, right, one thing that really stands out is how much space is actually dedicated to greenery and open areas. About 74% of the land, and that is roughly about 170 square feet for landscaping and facilities. So even though this is a 376 unit project, it doesn't really feel overly packed. And there are also multiple side gates which helps with daily convenience. Side gate 1 is over here, which is at the main arrival. Side gate 2 over here leads to the HDB site of Block 103 or East Creek at Canberra, where you have your Sheng Siong. So, and also side gate number 3 is sheltered, so you can actually take a bus to Canberra MRT or Sembawang MRT. And the layout itself is quite thoughtful, I feel. So you got the distinction of the arrival zone, social gathering, lifestyle activities, or even a kids adventure zone all spread out across. So you'll feel like you're living inside a mini park rather than a typical condo compound rather. So here's the artist's impression of how it looks like at the arrival zone and the social zones. And then next, we will actually breeze through like the rejuvenation zone where you have your gym, your lap pool, you have some function rooms and steam room as well. And this is where you have the lifestyle and kids club. They call it a Canberra club. So one of the standout features here is that in this Canberra club is actually a full-fledged private clubhouse that spans about 3,000 square meters. The entire facility zone stretches about 95 meters across the site, giving you proper separation between the lifestyle areas and the residential blocks over here. And here is the lifestyle zone. So you have the function room, entertainment room, barbecue pits, family pool, and also a mini golf even inside Canberra Crescents. So here you have the kids zone, you have pools, water slides, and even a playground. Another nice touch is that there is a 100-meter long sky garden that stretches across Block 55 and Block 57. Up here, you got everything from couple and family spa pools to yoga decks, barbecue pavilions, and quiet corners like reading lounges and lookout point. It's designed in a way whereby it is a space where residents can unwind without leaving the condo. So regardless if it's a sunset yoga or a outdoor dining or just some quiet time above the hustle of daily life, so this is something that residents can enjoy over here. So this is just a look on how it will look like at the top of the Sky Garden. And at the Sky Garden, just now, like I mentioned, you also have some family spa pools and some communal areas for you to enjoy. Okay, so let's look at the unit mix. It is pretty clear that what the developers are aiming for, Canberra Crescent Residences is heavily focused on the 3 and 4 bedroom layouts. And so this isn't your typical investor-driven projects with a sea of tiny one-bedders. Instead, it's designed for families who actually want to live here. And honestly, it really does make sense. This area, there's schools, parks, and also a short walk to Canberra MRT, which means that their daily routines, whether is it work commutes or grocery runs, are a lot more convenient. So this project is actually built around own-stay families who want more practical layouts close to amenities rather than investors chasing for rental yields. Here's the elevation chart. You can actually take a screenshot if you like. Okay, so one of the common concerns people would have for Canberra Crescent is that this area have quite a few ECs nearby. So naturally the question is, right, why would anyone pay more for a private condo here when there are resale ECs that are available at the lower price? So if we look at other neighborhoods, right, we still can see that private condos still do have a premium over the ECs and that buyers are still willing to pay the difference. So the real question here is that what is it that makes those private condos worth the price? So let's look at Pongo as an example. If you look at Privé, it's an EC who achieved its MOP in 2018 and River Isles would achieve its TOP in 2016. And if you pull your resale data from around 2020, you'll notice something quite interesting. Their PSF is actually quite close. And I feel that the reason is quite simple. In an area like Pongo, where there are also a lot of ECs and condos side by side, right? Most buyers don't really draw a big distinction between them, especially since the resale ECs are like pretty well done and almost look like private condos, and buyers are not so caught up whether it's EC or condo. They really just pay based on what they feel like the unit is worth. So in places like this, right, private condos, they do not really have an edge over the ECs. The market is shaped more by the immediate supply and the condition of units and whether the buyers see the value in the space and the lifestyle rather than the property title itself. But however, if you compare to a project like Watertown, it is very different because Watertown commands a clear premium because it offers something very unique and it is an integrated development which makes it connected to the MRT and a shopping mall. So in cases like this, the distinction is obvious. Buyers are willing to pay extra for the convenience and rarity of the product, not just for the condo status alone. However, in some other areas, the story is quite different. Take Hougang for an example. You've got Heron Bay here, which is an EC, MOP in 2020, and Riverfront Residence TOP in 2024, which is a private condo. If you compare them side by side, right, the price gap is actually there. And Riverfront residents are transacting about 1,700 to over 2,000, while Heron Bay is still in the 1,000-2,003 PSF range. So that is quite a big difference. So in a way, why are buyers so willing to pay so much more for Riverfront? I used to stay in Hougang, so I would really think that the reason is quite simple. The facade, the entrance, the landscaping, Heron Bay is pretty much quite dated, and the overall condo experience. So when people step into Riverfront, right, it really feels like on a completely different level of living as compared to Heron Bay. So even in Canberra, where we have quite a few ECs, right, we still do see a gap between the ECs and private condo. So take Brownstone for example, which MOP in 2022, and the resale prices have recently transacted about 1,003 to 1,005 PSF. But along the same road, further down, which is Watergarden, which is a private condo, just TOP in 2025, is already transacting at 1,750 to 1,790 per square foot, even though they just TOP. So I guess it's clear that buyers who are willing to pay for that premium because they see value in the lifestyle and facilities and finishes and the private condo experience. Even in locations with many ECs, right, there are still people who are drawn to that distinction when the private condos offer something that they feel is worth paying for. So a good developer track record and a good layout has a very big part to play. So when I come back to Canberra Crescent Residences, right, who is behind this project? It's King Leong, right? King Leong is a developer that is well known for building premium homes with thoughtful designs and timeless architecture. So you do expect the facade and overall finish to reflect that standard. So I would say that because of this track record, right, I would think that there is a fair chance for this condo to eventually sell higher as compared to the surrounding ECs in time to come. But of course, let's be realistic. Even if this project holds its value well, this is still an area with a lot of ECs and other condos. So when it's time for you to sell, right, you will still be competing with plenty of options nearby. So while your product may be better, it could still take a little longer to find the right buyer simply because the market has so many choices. So now we just go right into the one bedroom analysis, and there are only 3 units like this in the entire project, and they are all on level 1. So if you are someone who's looking for own stay unit and you're working with a tighter budget, this could be your opportunity. So because around $1,950 per square foot, the price is still below $800,000, which is quite rare in the new launch market today. And to be honest, right, this is probably one of your last chance to buy a new one bedroom at this kind of price point. Once it's gone, we might not see something similar for quite a while. So moving on to the 2-bedroom analysis, we have the 2-bedroom compact and we have the 2-bedroom premium series. So one thing to note about the 2-bedroom units at Canberra Crescent is that the washer and dryer is actually placed outside on the balcony. So the good news is that they come with carpentry to cover up the washer and dryer, so you don't really have to worry too much about the rain coming from the top. But what I do feel is a concern is the lower cabinet section. If there is rain coming in, that part will be more exposed and it could be more easily damaged over time. And the balcony itself is designed with 2 different levels. You would likely still want to install a zip track to keep the space properly sheltered. If you visit the show flat, then you take a closer look and you will see what I mean. But these are the small and important details that most of us might overlook when buying. They would matter because it's not just about the unit price. It is also knowing what the additional cost of renovations that you might need to budget for later on. As for the layout, the common bedroom is actually 9 square meters and the master is about 10 square meters. Overall, I would say that this is a very typical, straightforward dumbbell 2-bed 1-bath layout, and the size-wise, it's also pretty typical in this range for a 2-bed 1-bath. So what is a safe entry price for this 2-bedroom compact? I'll be using Watergardens at Canberra and The Commodore, which has just achieved its TOP in the last 1 year. As a comparison, because TOP projects would be the best to compare with what we have right now, because they will be used as a benchmark to help us gauge what is a safe entry price for Canberra Crescent Residences. So both the Watergardens and Commodore, they are both non-harmonized, which would mean that if, let's say today, these 2 projects were to be priced in a harmonized way, they would go all the way to 1,900 PSF, and it would mean that the price would end up in the 1.2 million range. So if you can get a 2-bed 1-bath unit here at Canberra Crescent at the similar quantum or even lower than what the most recent resale units at Watergarden and Commodore are transacting at, I think you are at a pretty safe price to enter because you are paying about the same as resale for a brand new unit. However, if the prices at Canberra Crescent pushes too far up, that means it's more than 2,200 per square foot, I personally feel that it would be on the high side. So next, we have the 2-bedroom premium, which is the 2-bed, 2-bath. Similar to the 2-bed, 1-bath layout, right? The washer and dryer is also similarly placed outside in the balcony. So these 2-bed, 2-bath units are actually mirror image of each other. There's no difference between them. But let's talk about the kitchen. So the kitchen at first glance, right, it looks like a tucked-in kitchen, which in some layouts, right, it would make very good sense because you would have the option to enclose it. But in this case, right, this tucked-in kitchen takes up the space of a proper enclosed kitchen, but yet you cannot enclose it. Because if let's say you try to put a glass partition over here, it will block off your main entrance. So what you're left with is a kitchen that takes up more space than a typical open kitchen, without the full functionality of an enclosed one. So this is something that you have to think about, especially if a kitchen space and ventilation is very, very important to you. So again, we'll be using Watergardens and Commodore, which are both non-harmonized projects again. So if these two projects were to be harmonized, they will be also up to 1,900-ish per square foot range, or translating to about 1.4 million range. So if I apply that to the lens of Canberra Crescent, I personally feel that same. If you can buy a unit below 1.4, which is around below 2,100 per square foot, you get it cheaper than the resale prices. That is a pretty safe entry point, and you are getting a brand new condo, and the upside is that you are buying close to the current resale prices. Again, we are using this TOP project as a comparison because future buyers who are looking into a brand new condo might also be looking at a 3 to 5 years old condo. So let's say if at that point, a resale 2-bed, 2-bath Watergardens is selling at $1.5 million, and Canberra Crescent is also selling at $1.5 million with no difference in layout, which would you think they would actually prefer? I think naturally buyers would skew towards the newer one, and they would have an advantage. So next, we will zoom into the 2-bedroom supply within the 1 kilometer radius of Canberra MRT. The numbers are actually quite limited. So across all the nearby projects, both private condos and ECs, their total of 13.8% of the total units are 2-bedders. And the reason is simple, because the developers here are for ECs, right? And ECs traditionally, they do not have a lot of smaller units, so they are built to cater to families, and you will see more of the 3 and 4 bedroom layouts. That is why developments like Canberra Crescent Residences, which offers a decent mix of 2-bedders, they do fill in the gap in the market, probably for singles, for young couples, or investors who want to invest in something that is more manageable in size and budget, and options around this area. So even though there's a lot of housing supply around in Canberra MRT, the number of 2-bedroom private condo units isn't exactly that high. Then we go into the 2-bedroom top choice. But before that, right, we look at the resale performance of Watergardens. The numbers do tell a pretty clear story. The 2-bed, 1-bath unit saw a return of investment of about 52%, with profits ranging from 130 to 140,000. Not bad. But when we look at the 2-bed, 2-bath over here, the returns are actually much stronger, around 76%. And the profits ranges from about 200,000 or more. So why is there a difference? I think because the 2-bed, 2-bath layouts is actually still a lot more versatile. It would work for couples who want a guest room, or families with a young child. Plus, having 2 bathrooms makes a lifestyle difference for most people. So while both layouts do make money, the 2-bed, 2-bath clearly gave better returns. And if you're thinking about future resale value, the more versatile your unit is, this will likely attract a wider pool of buyers. So this is something that you need to consider. So if you ask me, the top pick will be the 2-bed, 2-bath layout. It is more versatile and has a stronger resale appeal down the road. If we are talking about personal preference, I would lean towards the landed facing stacks, as it will be much nicer, quieter, and as compared to the institutional facing units. Just one thing to note, you will actually need to go for the 4th floor or higher if you want to clear the surrounding low-rise views. So to me, if you can combine the right facing, the right layout and the view, that is probably one of the sweetest spots for a 2-bedroom in this development. So moving on, the 3-bedroom, we have the compact series and the premium series. So just by looking at these three in comparison, right, and I compare between these two 797 square feet, literally they're exactly the same, just that the difference is in their facing. One is the institutional facing and the other one is the landed facing. However, if I compare it to the 872 square feet, they do have a walk-in wardrobe over here, but here's the thing, they are only 4 units. And they are all top floor. So which means you are likely paying about 150,000 extra just for the walk-in wardrobe and a little bit more of the exclusivity since you're on the top floor. But for this compact layout, I feel that the premium of 150,000 is a little bit steep. So unless you are someone who specifically wants this walk-in wardrobe and you are willing to pay top dollar for it, I think the 797 square feet is a more sensible choice. You pretty much get the same functionality at a more reasonable price point. For both of these 3-bedroom compact layouts, the study room can act as a flexible space room. You can turn it into a proper study or a storage room or even a helper's room. Alternatively, if you don't need any of that, you can hack down the wall to expand your dining space. This flexibility is actually quite great because it allows owners to adjust the layout based on what they actually need rather than being stuck with a fixed room that they don't really need to use. And I think that this is something that future buyers would appreciate too as well, because these people, maybe they need an extra space but they do not want to stretch their budget for a bigger 3-bedroom plus utility. So as for the difference between the 883 and the 872 square feet, to be honest, this 11 square feet goes to the slightly larger kitchen. And in terms of livable space, the rest of it is pretty much very similar. So what makes a safe entry price for the 3-bedroom compact? Again, we use Watergardens at Canberra as a benchmark because it just TOP in 2025. Making it the closest comparison in today's market, it will give us a good reference point for what buyers are already willing to pay for a recently completed project in the same area. Again, Watergardens is a non-harmonized project, so once we adjust this price to a harmonized price, it will work out to be about 1,800 to 1,900 per square foot, and it would translate to about 1.73 to 1.79 million for a 3-bedroom compact. So if today you are able to secure a 3-bedroom compact at Canberra Crescent at a similar quantum or lower, meaning lower than 2,100 per square foot, I would think that is quite a safe entry price. Again, you are buying a brand new launch closer to resale price, which gives you certain buffer. So moving on to the 3-bedroom premium, both of which is 990 square feet, both are the same size. But if we were to compare these 990 square feet to the earlier 883 square feet, right, the only difference that you're actually noticing is the extra home shelter and WC. But the price difference that you're paying, right, is actually around 200 to 215,000 more for just the home shelter and the WC. So just now, if you remember the 883 square feet, it comes with a study that you can easily convert it into helper's room, storage room, or you can just leave it there as a study as a flexibility, right? In other projects, usually the 3-bedroom compact, they don't have a helper space or much storage. So when they go to a 3-bedroom premium layout, it really does make sense. But here at Canberra Crescent, right, the 883 square feet, which is the compact layout, they already cover most of the practical needs, which is why this 3-bedroom premium at 990 square feet doesn't really stand out as a must upgrade option unless you are someone who really specifically wants the household shelter and the WC. I personally would feel that the 883 3-bedroom compact would give you better value for your money and you save a huge chunk of money without losing the key functionalities. So what is a safe entry price for this 3-bedroom premium in Canberra Crescent. So again, Watergardens and Commodore are both non-harmonized. So if let's say I use their transacted PSF and translate it to a harmonized price, it will be about 1,900 per square foot. And it will translate to a quantum of 2.03 to 2.14 million for the 3-bedroom premium units. So again, if you're able to secure a 3-bedroom premium at Canberra Crescent Residence at less than 2,100 per square foot, you are pretty much at quite a safe price because this is the same as a resale price. So we are going into the top choices for the 3 bedrooms here. If you're considering a 3-bedroom compact at Canberra Crescent Residence, I think just now my 883 square feet, I made it quite clear that it's my top choice. It is an institutional facing but offers the most practical layout. You get the flexible space that you can use as a study, helper's room, or even storage. Hack it down to extend your dining area. It gives you the flexibility without wasting space. And overall, I think it strikes a very good balance between functionality and price. And the second choice would be the 990 square feet. It faces either the landed or the institutional areas with an additional home shelter and WC, which are nice to have, but pushing the prices nearly to 200,000 more. And yes, the living and kitchen area might feel a little bit more spacious, but it is whether this price really justifies how much more you are putting into the unit. And lastly, we have the 797 square feet, which is the most compact and affordable option. It is a simple dumbbell layout with all the essentials, but essentially you're sacrificing on storage and maybe a helper space. So this is probably more suited for those who want a 3-bedroom layout but are on a tighter budget. But if you're after value and practicality, the 883 square feet layout feels like a sweet spot. Moving on to the 4-bedroom, we have the compact, the standard, and the premium. So both of these 4-bedroom compact layouts are almost identical. The only real difference is at the foyer area. Other than that, the internal layout, the bedroom sizes, the overall flow are pretty much the same. So your choice here will probably come down to whether you prefer a landed facing or an institutional facing. And then we move to the 4-bedroom standards. These two layouts again are exactly the same in size, both at 1,216 square feet. You're basically getting still the same spacious living and dining area, a full width balcony, and a practical study room that you can convert or hack depending on your needs. And then lastly, this is the 4-bedroom premium, which this is the largest 4-bedroom layout in this project. 1,324 square feet, is located at Stack 27. It is a premium layout with a scenic or landed view, and there are only 12 units available. So this space actually gives you a wider balcony of 5 meters, a bigger dry kitchen, and a walk-in wardrobe in your master bedroom, which is great for families who want extra living and storage space. But of course, naturally, it comes at a higher price point as compared to the 4-bedroom standard and the 4-bedroom compact. So when we compare the 4-bedroom compact 1,163 square feet compared to the standard layout of 1,216 square feet, the difference is pretty obvious. For the compact layout, even if you hack away the study, there is still a small structural wall in the middle of the living room. So to be honest, the space will not feel as wide or even as open. And your sliding door to the balcony will also be a lot smaller. On the other hand, the standard layout will have a full width sliding balcony, which opens up the entire living and dining space, and you can also still either keep or remove the study room depending on whether you need it for a helper's room, storage, or a bigger dining area. On top of it, the standard unit has a slightly larger kitchen, a household shelter, an extra bathroom, and in short, the standard layout is much better in terms of flow and functionality. If you're buying for own stay and if you want more comfortable living space, I think this is the one that you should go for. when we actually compare the 4-bedroom standard and the 4-bedroom premium, 1,216 square feet for the standard and 1,324 square feet for the premium, the difference is, to be honest, really mostly lifestyle features. The premium one gives you a larger dry kitchen, a walk-in wardrobe, and a larger balcony. But let's be honest, a larger balcony isn't exactly a must-have for most families. And the extra dry kitchen is nice, but it's not critical. So with all of that, right, you're nearly paying about 400,000 extra for the premium layout. So if you are practical about space and price, right, the 1,216 square feet standard layout would definitely feel like a smarter choice because you get the full 4-bedroom setup with great internal space and flexibility without overpaying for the extras that most families do not use. So what is a safe entry price for 4-bedroom? Again, we'll use the Watergardens and Commodore. And if I use their transacted price of 1,789 per square foot and 1,005 to 1,700 per square foot and adjust it to a harmonized price, it will be about 1,600 per square foot to 1,900 per square foot, which works out to be about $2.1 million to $2.6 million. So in Canberra Crescent Residence, I feel that if, let's say, today you can get a 4-bedroom at below 2,100 per square foot, I think you are entering at a safer entry price because it is the same as the resale market. So let's go into the 4-bedroom top choice. I think it was quite obvious earlier. Between these two layouts, the 1,216 square feet will probably be a smarter choice for most buyers. You still get a functional full 4-bedroom layout, a decent dry kitchen, and a full width balcony at a more affordable quantum as compared to the 1,324 square feet 4-bedroom premium layout, which adds on to a larger balcony, a larger dry kitchen, and a walk-in wardrobe, which are nice to have. Again, it comes at a much higher price. So I think for most families, I think 1,216 square feet would give you everything you need without overspending. So the preview for Canberra Crescent Residence will start on 19th of July. It will give the buyers a first look at the show flat, and the pricing would release on the 2nd of August, which is the official launch date, where the units will be released for booking. And if you are seriously considering this project, your preview period will be the best chance for you to study the layouts, shortlist your preferred stacks, and prepare for the balloting. So that is my full take for Canberra Crescent Residence. We've covered the layouts, the prices, and more importantly, how this project stacks up against nearby condos and ECs. And if you're thinking of checking it out in person, the show flat previews in 19 July, and I always tell my clients, it is one thing to look at floor plans, it is another thing to walk the space yourself and feel what suits you. So if you would like to secure a preview slot or get first-hand launch updates, feel free to reach out to me directly. My contact details are on the screen, or you can join my Telegram channel where I share early info on launches, price guides, time-sensitive deals, and I hope this breakdown have helped you make a more informed decision, and I'll see you at the preview.